The restaurant had the kind of lighting that made everything look expensive. Velvet chairs, low amber lamps, and crystal glasses that clinked too sharply when touched. We were seated in the center, too public, to expose just how Colton liked it. He thrived in places like this, where the air was thick with prestige and whispers. It was our 10th wedding anniversary. I had to remind him this morning. He'd muttered a distracted, right, while adjusting his cufflinks, more focused on his Zoom meeting than my words. I should have cancelled, but I didn't. I still wanted to try, though I wasn't sure what I was trying for anymore. I wore navy. Not black, too severe. Not red, he said. It made me look like I was trying too hard. Navy was safe. The dress hugged the right places. Subtle, but elegant. My heels clicked with confidence, but every step felt like walking on eggshells. When we arrived, he barely glanced at me. He was already in performance mode, laughing too loud, shaking hands with people whose names I couldn't bother remembering. None of my friends were here. Not even my sister. Just his colleagues, his golfing buddies, and his mother, who gave me a once-over and a tight smile. I folded my napkin into a little leaf, something I always did when nervous. Colton didn't notice. He was deep in a story about his latest investment round, making sure everyone knew just how liquid he was these days. They all laughed. I smiled politely. The appetizers came and went. Wine flowed like it was free, and Colton soaked in the attention. Occasionally he'd lay a hand on my arm, a performative gesture, more for optics than affection. I played along. That was the deal. I'd made it this far pretending. But then he said it, loud enough for the entire table to hear, over the clatter of forks and casual banter. You know what? You should sleep in the guest room tonight. I need space. The table fell quiet, then erupted in scattered, awkward laughter. Some chuckled too hard. Others sipped their drinks, eyes darting anywhere but me. I froze. Smile. Don't let them see you break. Inside, I was collapsing. Not from surprise. From the confirmation of what I already knew. I was invisible to him. Unless I made a scene. He didn't look at me when he said it. I just took another sip of his wine, as if dismissing a maid who'd forgotten his coat. My breath sat heavy in my chest. A balloon, slowly deflating. I remembered the last few months, him coming home late. The quiet dinners. The way his voice changed when he was on the phone. The way he'd stopped saying, we. I said nothing. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Dessert came. Or at least, it started to. A waiter approached, silver tray in hand. But he wasn't looking at Colton. He turned to me. Your private table upstairs is ready, owner, he said. Calm. Respectful. The words sliced through the air like a blade. Everything stopped. Forks hovered, mid-air. Glasses stilled. Colton's face went from smug to pale. He blinked. Twice. What did you just say? The waiter stood his ground. Your private table is ready, Miss Kayla. I blinked too. But I didn't flinch. Not this time. I stood, smoothed the front of my dress, and said evenly, Thank you. I believe I will take my seat now. His mother choked on her wine. One of the business partners leaned in to whisper to his wife. I heard the word owner pass like a secret down the line. Confusion painted their faces. I let them wonder. I didn't look at Colton. Instead, I walked away, heels clicking with purpose. Inside, my hands trembled, but my face? Steel. Just hours ago, I'd signed the final paperwork. There had been a call from my lawyer. Something about full transfer of equity and executive rights. I hadn't told Colton. Why would I? Silence isn't always surrender. Sometimes, it's strategy. Upstairs, the room was quieter, more dignified. A table by the window overlooked the Dallas skyline. I sat alone, the city blinking back at me, vast and indifferent. I poured a glass of wine, not caring if it paired with the dessert. Downstairs, They were still whispering. I could feel it. But up here, there was peace. They laughed. But tonight, for once, I wasn't the punchline. I pulled out my phone and sent a message. Just one. No text displayed, only the whoosh of it being sent. I looked at the glass in front of me, then out the window. I've been quiet long enough. The morning after, the penthouse was so quiet. It felt staged, like one of those open houses, full of elegant furniture, but no life. I stood in the kitchen, barefoot on cold marble, a coffee mug warming my hands. He was already gone. No note, no mention of last night. Just the usual. Silence. Some silences aren't golden. They're just gutless. I took a sip. Lukewarm. Not that it mattered. I stared out at the skyline, the same view we used to talk about late at night, dreaming of our future. That word meant something once. Now, it just echoed inside these glass walls. I scrolled through my phone, shallow birthday messages. A few pity likes from women I used to host luncheons with. All noise. For years, mornings like this were routine. Wake up to his absence. Make coffee. Pretend I was okay. But today, I wasn't pretending. I wasn't okay. I was clear. I gave so much of myself to be here, to be his. But the return on that investment, a man who wouldn't even look me in the eye unless it served him. No warmth, no recognition, just glass, metal, and that damned silence. The phone buzzed. A reminder about the upcoming charity gala, held at our estate. I opened the invite out of habit, always dies hard. My name wasn't on it. Not once. Not as a host, not as a co-sponsor, not even as a +1. Then came the call. An assistant from the event team asked if I could help prepare the guest welcome packets. Wait, who did you say I was again? I asked. You're Mrs. Gunness's assistant, right? I didn't answer. She kept talking. Something about linen samples and signature pens. I hung up. It's one thing to be unloved. It's another to be unseen. I made my way to the estate, later that morning. The staff was buzzing florists, arranging grand centerpieces, caterers timing their walkthroughs. I walked past them like a ghost in my own home. No one looked up. I asked one of the housekeepers, "Why is my name missing from the gala program?" She hesitated. "I believe Mr. Gunness finalized the list, ma'am." Another staff member chimed in, trying to sound helpful. "Everything's according to his orders." I nodded. Not surprised, just disappointed. As I walked through the main hall, I tried to recall the last time someone asked me what I wanted, what I thought. Even my reflection in the gilded mirrors felt unfamiliar. Then, something surfaced. Weeks ago, Colton handed me a stack of documents to sign. "Just standard protection stuff," he said. "Don't worry your pretty head about legal stuff." Back then, I didn't push. I just signed. Now, I remembered every page. That afternoon, my phone rang again. My lawyer. "Just confirming transfer of the estate under your name is complete. All titles, all holdings. Congratulations." My fingers gripped the phone tighter. "What?" I said, flatly. "You didn't know?" "It went through this morning." And just like that, the air shifted. Colton had made me sign the transfer weeks ago, to shield his assets, keep them away from potential lawsuits. He assumed I wouldn't notice, or understand. But here's the thing about assuming someone's invisible. You forget they're still watching. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just sat back in the car and started putting the pieces together. All the signs, all the quiet moves. He thought he was playing chess, but he handed me the queen. They forgot to respect the woman who reads the fine print. I returned to the estate, just as the planning meeting was starting. The event coordinator did a double take as I walked in, uninvited. "I'd like to make a few adjustments to the seating chart," I said calmly. I'm sorry. Who? As the estate owner, I said. Not louder, but sharper. I believe that's within my rights. The room fell quiet. She fumbled with her tablet. A few staff members exchanged confused looks. I didn't wait for permission. I walked straight to the large display board where the guest list was being arranged. And there it was. Name after name. But not mine. I picked up the red marker. Wrote my name, Kayla Elise Gunnis, right at the top. Then I stepped back, looked at it, and whispered to myself, they'll remember it now. It was evening, and the house had slipped into a muted hush. I moved through the hallway toward Colton's study, intending to ask about the gala, and perhaps demand respect. But something in the silence stopped me. A low murmur came from behind the door. My name. His voice. My heart tightened. I pressed my ear to the wood. She signed everything without reading. She's just the perfect cover, Colton said, flat and certain. His sister's laugh cracked like ice. My breathing caught. Trust shattered mid-sentence. I stumbled back into the shadows, clutching the doorframe, my pulse pounding. So, that's what my trust was worth. The betrayal was no longer hidden in silence. I retreated quietly, arms wrapped around myself. In that corridor I replayed the first time I signed anything for him. Naive, trusting him to guide me. Now I understood the trap. Once I reached my private office, I exhaled that breath I'd been holding all evening. I flipped on the desk lamp and opened a drawer where unopened mail and dusty files waited. I sorted through them with new eyes. Old financial statements, company names masquerading as subsidiaries, documents with my signature on them, all tied to my name, and yet I had never authorized their use. I found spreadsheets. Liabilities shifted under my name, while assets remained under his control. Colton had used me as a shield, assuming I wouldn't look. He thought I'd remain invisible until he needed me. But here I was, piecing it together. I took photos, scanned documents into a secure drive, filing away every breadcrumb. He arranged these corridors with secrets well. They would be corridors I now understood. I called Marie, my lawyer, pretending casual curiosity. Say this. If a property is transferred under someone's name, doesn't that make them the legal owner? My voice was steady, but inside I trembled. Yes, she confirmed calmly. Legally you are, but it's unusual in this structure. She paused. Why are you asking? I didn't answer. Just verifying who owns my silence, I said. The words tasted sharp. That night, Colton entered the dining room, as though nothing had changed. He asked if I'd been well today, as though my absence from last night had been routine. I met his gaze evenly. I said, funny. I've spent the evening reading the fine print of my life. I didn't wait for his response. I stood and walked away. Behind me, his confusion lingered. He didn't know yet, but the game he started was already over. He just hadn't read the fine print either. The night was already humming before we even pulled up. Downtown Dallas, bathed in soft gold lights, pretended to care who walked its carpet. Colton's company charity gala was in full swing. Expensive wine, empty smiles, and a guest list, curated like a political campaign. I didn't walk into that ballroom as his wife tonight. I walked in as his oversight. I chose the dress he once called too loud, deep crimson, structured, unapologetic, the same one I'd stuffed to the back of the closet, because it made him feel less important next to me. I wore it like armor now. Before leaving the penthouse, I'd stared into the mirror for a long time, practicing calm. Just calm. I whispered to my own reflection. If truth is a blade, let it be velvet wrapped. The flash drive in my clutch was light in weight, heavy in what it could destroy. Every file was a stitch of silence undone. The ballroom was noise and champagne. But when Colton opened his mouth at dinner, silence came first. She's good at smiling through confusion, he said, holding court at the table like the showman he always thought he was. The laughter was polite, tight, but audible. The kind that says more about the audience than the joke. I didn't flinch. Instead, I smiled, placed my hand lightly over his, let him think it was affection. Then I leaned in, voice steady, soft enough for the table to hush. Confusion's temporary, but signatures? They're forever. The mood shifted. He blinked, the joke hanging there, like stale air. His fingers twitched under mine. Around us, glasses paused mid-air. I watched them watching him, not me, and I saw it. A sliver of doubt in their eyes. Not about me, but about him. My voice had changed weight. We didn't stay long after. In the car, I asked for a moment. Just us. The driver rolled up the partition, and for the first time in years, Colton looked at me like he was trying to remember who I was. I spoke plainly. Every stitch of this marriage was woven with your thread, I said. But it turns out silk burns too. He laughed once, short. You're being dramatic again. Maybe, I replied. But even a dress you hate can get someone's attention. You're not touching the accounts, he snapped. As if that still scared me. I smiled, gentle as a cut. I don't need access when I already own the keys. He stared at me like I'd just spoken another language. And for once, I didn't fill the silence for him. Back, at the penthouse, I didn't cry. I journaled. Every word he spoke, every look exchanged at that table, every laugh that died too quickly. I wrote it down. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. I'd read that in a Maya Angelou collection. Colton once called sentimental nonsense. I wrote it in bold across the page. And beneath it, a list names of people who watched the moment shift tonight. People who'd matter when the pieces started falling. I replayed the look in his eyes when I mentioned the keys. He wasn't angry. He was recalculating. He taught me silence meant surrender. But I'm rewriting that lesson with a whisper. The morning after the gala felt like a weight I couldn't lift. I lay in the dark for a long time, listening to an empty silence that seemed to judge me. The sun had come up somewhere, but not here. The space beside me was untouched. He was gone. I finally rose and walked through the estate. Staff moved in hushed tones. No one met my eyes. One of them paused, whispered, "I'm sorry," and vanished down the hallway before I could respond. My heart panged, but I kept walking. Rooms were being cleared. My reading room partially emptied. My studio, already half-packed. Paintings, missing from walls. Books, gone. I recognized those spaces. They were my breath. Now, ghost echoes occupied them. On the counter, a crisp memo. I hesitated before unfolding. The assistant's name at the bottom. Schedule psychiatric evaluation. Discreet protocol. I read it twice. They weren't just removing my things. They were trying to remove me. They weren't erasing my space. They were erasing my sanity on paper. I sat at the counter, holding the crumpled paper, silent. I couldn't cry. There was no tear left to shed. Even grief needs a name. And mine had been stolen. Later, I dragged myself to my small office, a place I rarely used. I opened my old journal, the one I'd kept since before we married. Pages wound with fragile words, full of second guesses and quiet apologies. I traced my finger over lines that said, "Maybe I overreacted. I should have listened. He's tired. I'm imagining things." He'd questioned me so softly over the years that I forgot when the doubt started. "You're too emotional," he'd said. "You're always assuming the worst." I never fought back. I didn't know how. I closed the journal, heart racing. Out loud I asked, was I really that naive? Then, under my breath, or was I taught to doubt every strength I had? Just after noon, my phone buzzed. "Marie, my lawyer. Don't assume this is paranoia," she said. "I've reviewed the filings. He's trying to preemptively frame you. This is control." My voice was quiet. "He's making me look insane, before I can expose him. Marie's tone turned sharp. It's how men with power protect themselves. They attack the mind when they can't control the truth. She was right. This went deeper than a marriage. This was a system built to silence women who wake up too late. I forced myself out of the house. Drove to the post office I used for discreet mail. The box held one white envelope. No name. I opened it with shaking hands. He's planning to have you institutionalized. Don't trust the family doctor. The handwriting was familiar. Curved. Precise. I recognized Margie's loop on the G. My breath caught. I sat in the car. Heart pounding. My vision blurred. This wasn't anger or sadness. It was detection. Exposure. He wasn't losing control. He was engineering my surrender. By dusk, rage had settled like steel under my ribs. If I had to lose everything, I resolved I would at least lose it on my terms. I returned home, carried that memo to the fireplace, and lit it. I watched it burn, letting it crack and curl, until it was ash. I didn't save the ashes. I left them to the wind. He came in late. He didn't look at him until I spoke. You seem off lately, he said, voice measured. I turned slowly. Maybe. Or maybe I've finally stopped editing myself for your comfort. He hesitated. I stepped past him, down toward the guest room. I opened the door and stood in its threshold. Let him think I'd moved out of our bedroom. Let him think I was retreating. I was not leaving. I was repositioning. The luncheon hall was bright, sharp, designed for performance. Executives sat at long tables, servers gliding between them. I arrived with a straight back, feeling every eye flick at my name badge. I held the flash drive in my pocket like a loaded card. Colton stood at the podium smiling, polished. Then he looked down at me and said, loud enough for cameras, "You're good when you don't speak." The laughter that followed had the edge of mockery. A few board members glanced at me, waiting. My throat tightened. I told myself, I must never let my face crack their mirror. I slipped my hand into my pocket, fingers grazing the drive. Without hesitation, I said, "Excuse me," and left the room before anyone could respond. Later, in a hallway that should have been private, Clara stepped in front of me, blocking my path. Her voice was soft, but cold. "I've always supported him. You should stop imagining yourself above me." She watched me carefully. "So you chose power over sisterhood?" I asked, voice steady. She looked away. "He promised me more if I stayed loyal." My heart stalled for a moment. There I was, trusting someone close, only to be stabbed in shadow. Clara had been doing small favors, holding doors, sharing inside jokes with him, carrying his messages. I'd brushed them off. No more. I backed away. Disbelief settled into resolve. Clara's betrayal didn't crack me. It sharpened my conviction. That afternoon, I returned home and found Elias, the doorman, in the foyer. I handed him the flash drive. "You've seen the corners no one else noticed," I told him. He met my eyes and nodded silently. Inside, I confessed how afraid I was, how alone. Elias didn't speak. He placed a hand on my arm. "You are not alone," he said quietly. His voice was calm, unwavering. I held back tears. I wrote it then in my journal. When walls whisper, my voice echoes. That night, Colton cornered me in the living room. His silhouette, framed by the wide French doors. His tone was sharp, demanding. "Stay in your place, Kayla," he said. His words came with Clara's betrayal, wrapped inside them. He name-dropped her, used it as a weapon, as if that made me small. I stood firm, voice cold. "All your walls are built on my permissions. Permitted no more." I turned on my heel and walked away. He was left standing in the dim light, uncertain. When betrayal strikes from within, you don't survive by hiding, you survive by shining. Morning broke, not with warmth, but with headlines. My phone lit up with alerts. Fraud scandal, embezzlement, shell companies, all tied to Colton's name. I sat at my kitchen table, tea steaming in a white cup, as the world scrambled. I'd sent the flash drive through a trusted journalist contact last night. Now, their exposé was alive. The truth isn't always loud. Sometimes it enters the room, like thunder from a clear sky. Social media exploded. Every feed filled with commentary, speculation, and hashtags I never imagined. Colton's carefully built image cracked under pressure. Comments questioned his integrity. Reporters dug into his past. Tweets surfaced. Is she the real owner? Where was Kayla in all this? My phone buzzed with a message from Clara. What did you do? I didn't respond. I looked out the window, the city breathing beneath me, feeling the shift. I sipped my tea, lips curving into a quiet smile. Justice is served slow, but hot. He stormed into the house before noon, his face red, his voice harsh. You sabotaged me, he yelled. This is your fault. I met his eyes, calm. I didn't deny anything. He shook his head. You destroyed my legacy. When someone breaks you piece by piece, I said, voice steady, they don't get to demand your silence. His lawyer appeared behind him, stern, suit pressed. He whispered a warning. Colton, say nothing publicly until we issue a statement. I leaned forward. You used me to build a throne. Now I sit in its shadow and write the last decree. The weight of those words hung long. Later, the station called and scheduled a live TV interview. They invited both of us. Colton accepted immediately. I declined, but I fed everything to my lawyer behind the scenes. During the broadcast, he faced questioning about finances, accounts, offshore transfers. He stuttered, misexplained, contradicted himself. I watched from a private lounge, Elias by my side. The spotlight was on him, but he wilted. He was drowning in his own language. Some wars are won, not by shouting, but by letting someone reveal their own destruction. After the interview, my legal team gathered in a glass boardroom. I reviewed our plan, complete exposure, employee safeguards, asset recovery. They were aligned. Then the board reached out. Would you consider leading the restructuring proposal? Something inside me tightened in a good way. Years of being dismissed, ignored, erased. Now one sentence of recognition. I went through the company building on the next day. Everyone saw me differently. Heads turned. Conversations paused. A young intern whispered, "Thank you for not breaking quietly." I paused in the hallway. That moment stung, but it also healed. I didn't just take back my name. I gave it meaning.